Hello, and thank you so much for joining us for Coffee and Conversation. I'm here with Pastor Jeff, and I'm really excited for this week's topic.
Yes, I'm very excited about this and what we're going to do today. Jill has some questions. Please go ahead and continue to send them in, but it is great to be with you. You know, before we delve into the stuff from this week, I want to pick up a little bit about last week.
Absolutely.
Because we were talking about forgiveness, if I remember correctly,
Yes.
and the idea about revenge and retribution. And last week, I had this great experience. I got to be at St. Joseph's Abbey in Covington, Louisiana, St. Benedict, Louisiana, north of New Orleans. And in the services, and they worship 5 times a day. It was wonderful. Starting at 6 a.m., it was great. I appreciate their hospitality at St. Joseph's Abbey at St. Benedict. And letting me sit up in the nave of the church and do the chanting and the singing with the monks. And they do all these psalms. They do several of the psalters, the psalms. And I was looking at them, I go, oh, that's right. You know, so many times in the psalms, there are these expressions of wanting revenge or retribution.
Yeah.
You know, for example, a couple of them. One that from Psalm 40, where the psalmist says, "Let those who seek my life, who want me dead, be disgraced and put to shame. Let those who want to do me harm be thoroughly frustrated and humiliated." And it's okay to pray that. I mean, there's just this expression of feeling, and God is big enough to handle those kind of feelings. And then another one from Psalm 56, where it says, "My attackers trample me all day long, because I have so many enemies. All day long they frustrate my pursuits. All their thoughts are evil against me. Don't rescue them for any reason. And wrath bring them down, God." So, you know, there are expressions of revenge.
So I have a question about that.
Okay.
So, everyone is human, and I think we've all maybe had those feelings.
Most people I've met are.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I think we've all had feelings where it's like, you're so frustrated with someone, and like, God, I'm so angry with this person. Does that make us a bad Christian to have those feelings?
No, not to have those feelings.
Okay.
And I think it's even wonderful that the psalmist, and I think it's a good way to do it, is to express those to God. And now to act on those feelings, that's where we get into causing more harm. And when we act on them, then there isn't a forgiving spirit. But perhaps, I know a lot of times for myself in my life, the first step on that forgiveness journey was to actually express those feelings of wanting the revenge, or how hurt it has been, or, you know, God, stop them, do something to them. And that. And in fact, there's a whole book like that. It's called Lamentations, the book of Lamentations, these chapters. And each, you probably can't see it there on the screen, but if you look at it, so it begins with a letter of the Hebrew alphabet, each stanza.
Right.
And so it'd be like taking and writing it out. So starting with A and writing a couple sentences that begin with A, and then B, and then C. And by the time you get towards the end of the alphabet, you've probably pretty well worked through it. It's like working through it from A to Z.
Okay.
On that. So yeah, it's just, and that's a good exercise if you're dealing with those feelings. Nothing wrong with feeling that way. I don't think we can deny our emotions.
Well, and I love the way you said that. You can't deny your emotions. And I think part of getting past that is not going into that temptation. So it's okay to feel that way, just don't act on that temptation. So that kind of leads us into this week's questions.
Yes,
No,
on the leading into temptation, so not denying it, but I think we also don't want to give into temptation to bury those emotions. Like denying, because, you know, buried emotions, as is said, buried emotions never die. They'll just... It'll be like an eruption, like a volcano eruption at some point. So there's, I think, the temptation not to bury them, not to deny them, but not to give in to the temptation to actually act on them.
It's like that fine middle ground.
I think so. And that's the journey of forgiveness. Well, go ahead. So we got a question?
So it kind of leads us into some of the questions for this week. When people experience that frustration and stuff, it's usually because they've experienced some sort of pain, whether physical, emotional. How would you why does God allow bad things to happen? And to kind of elaborate on that, if you were explaining that to a non-believer, how would you explain to that person why bad things happen?
Okay. That is like an encyclopedia.
Yeah.
It's hard to give a real short answer in the time that we have here. I mean, there are volumes of books and treatises and, whole semesters of class just on what we call the Odyssey, or the problem of evil.
Okay.
Another way to look at it is, why do bad things happen to good people? Sometimes I can't even explain why bad things happen to bad people, or why good things happen to good people. But with that, some things just happen. Now, some things are caused by people's intent towards evil, or bad judgments, or giving in temptation, or sinning. And there are consequences for that. And so that's some of the harm that is done, is just from consequences. Does God have a greater purpose in this? That's what I'm kind of hearing in the back of that question. Maybe not all the time, no.
Okay.
I don't think that, for one, I don't think God causes all the evil.
Right.
God, I really don't. Not everything is caused. Some things happen. It's by our choice. Wasn't God's design or desire. People make bad choices. And we have God has gifted us with the capacity of free will. God doesn't make us, and so God, not everything is caused by God on that. But they do happen. And I believe as they happen, that God can bring something good from it.
Okay.
Now, God doesn't cause it. Oh, well, I'm going to cause this bad thing to happen so I can bring this good. But I believe that God is in the midst of it, that perhaps something good in the midst. And I believe that's what Paul says to the church at Rome when he says, God is working things together for good.
Right.
For those who love him.
Right.
That God wants, if there's something good to be brought from it, God is going to be able to do, God will do that.
Okay.
But, sometimes there are situations you need to look back and you go, I still can't figure out what
the purpose is.
Well, that was there good that came from that? Well, maybe not. There might not always be that. So I would say, I would not want to tell the non-follower of Christ, a non-believer, that, well, God causes, all of that. That's just not where I am, and I don't believe that's where we are within what we call the Wesleyan tradition in the United Methodist Church, of because of free will in that, but that God is always there. God's grace is always operating.
Well, I think you touched kind of on the next question, actually.
Okay.
But one of the questions that was asked is, when bad things happen, is it a punishment? Does it mean that I wasn't a good enough person? I wasn't a good enough follower of God? And I think you kind of touched on that a little bit.
And it doesn't always mean it's a punishment. Okay. Sometimes there are consequences for our people's sin, people's evil actions. I mean, look what's happening over in Ukraine. People are suffering. People in the world are suffering because of evil actions on the part of leadership of Russia and what ordering Russian soldiers to do. I mean, that's just evil embodied. And people are suffering. Now, is God punishing Ukraine for something? No, I'm not going to say that. And I would not want us to say that when these innocent people would never want to say that. But sometimes in our own, sometimes bad choices, intentional bad choices that cause great harm are punished. But it doesn't mean all the bad is a punishment from God.
Okay.
It wasn't always looked that way. And it's not always that God is causing something bad to bring about good.
Okay.
In the book of Ezekiel in the Old Testament, Ezekiel offers one way of looking at it, that God's desire is for people to come to know God, and that God is going to use any situation, whether good or evil, to bring people to know God. There's a repeating refrain in the book of Ezekiel, so they will know that I am God. Even the non-Jewish countries
Right.
and nations. There's that, so they will know that I am God. So it's not that everything, but God, can use these things and to try to bring people closer to God.
Okay.
So did I answer that?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
Well, tell me what you heard.
Okay, so what I took from that conversation is like, no, it is not a punishment. God is not, bad things are not caused by God, but God may be a part of every situation. He's not going to be part of the evil, but
Right.
he might lift you up through the evil, or he may be able to lift you up and bring out the good from a terrible situation.
Uh-huh.
And I think we can see that in some situations, but I think you're also right in that not every situation you can see the good, but I am a firm believer that God does not create evil, that's people falling into temptation, but that God is there to lift you up and offer you another path. So that's kind of what I took from it.
Yeah,
so.
no, that's great. And
Okay.
then I want to dovetail a little bit on it. When you were talking, it got me thinking. I thought Jill actually explained it better than I did. So, but in talking about God working to bring this good, sometimes that good is brought from us partnering with God.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thinking about the verse out of 1 Corinthians in the first chapter, verse 9, that says, God is faithful and you are called by him to partnership with his son, Jesus Christ. Called into partnership. So let's say like the situation in Ukraine and all these people that, the refugees.
Right.
And some that may come over to our own country, to the United States. Can we partner? Can we do something to help them? And so we're partnering with God and we're being involved. It's more than just praying, but then, because in the Lord's Prayer, there was that wonderful thing, the ora et labora, pray and work.
Yes.
Pray and work. So pray for them, but maybe we can be partnering with God and working with God to help bring something good into their life.
Yes.
At this point.
Yes, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right about that. I love that you mentioned us partnering with God to bring out that good. And I think in many situations that can be applied. So.
Yeah, and that's what we're called to do. And that's one thing I love about being United Methodist.
Yes.
Is we do believe in that personal relationship with Jesus Christ, but we got to live it out in community and in our society and socially. So it's like John Wesley said, there's the personal piety or personal holiness, that personal relationship, but there's also the social aspect.
Yes.
It's not just one or the other. It's both. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and that kind of leads us into some of the things that we have coming up.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Cool.
So one of the things that we're going to be doing this Saturday is reaching out to the community, right? And
that's
partnering together to hand out Easter bags to the community. So that's one way that we're partnering with God to go out into the community and share that love. And that's not necessarily from a bad situation, but it may affect people who are in bad situations and let them know that, there is a place for them and that all are welcomed here. So I think that's one of the great things, like you said, about being Methodist is serving our community by serving God. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So one of the other questions that we had was, we call this coffee and conversation. Are we going to do like coffee conversation karaoke?
I don't know if you're going to want me to sing karaoke.
James Gordon brought car karaoke back, so I was just thinking,
Karaoke may not be my strong suit, Pastor Jeff.
Yeah.
You'd need headphones.
Well, we'll just do the koinonia, which is the Greek word for partnership, so we'll do that.
Okay.
So, no, do we have any other questions?
I think that wraps us up for today.
Yeah.
So.
And we're talking this Sunday, which will be Palm Sunday, about thine is the kingdom. And then on Easter, thine is the power and the glory, to bring the series on the Lord's Prayer to not a close, but to bring it to a point of, okay, let's continue to pray, but let's do that pray and work. Now, let's dare to live it.
Yes.
We've encountered it.
We can live it.
Yeah. And, this past Sunday, I like how it was said in the traditional service when Emily Knorr sang the Lord's Prayer.
That was beautiful.
We have talked about the Lord's Prayer, but Emily helped us to experience the Lord's Prayer. And if you haven't seen it, look on Facebook or YouTube for the service from April 3rd, the tradition service, 10:45 in the sanctuary, and Emily singing the Lord's Prayer.
Yes.
That we got to experience.
And I think we have just the clip of it posted on Facebook
Oh,
also.
marvelous.
So you don't have to go through the service. If you want to look at that particular clip, you can look at that clip and view it on Facebook. So.
Yeah, and if you haven't, and it might be nice as we go into Holy Week that maybe you want to look at that clip every day and just listen to the Lord's Prayer to help put you in, to help center yourself and put you in a frame of mind for each day as we go through Holy Week.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Speaking of Holy Week, we're going to do something a little different next week, right?
Yes, I'm so excited. We're going to go live.
We're going to be live.
We're going to
so
be live.
We don't edit out all the stuff that we just had to edit out, right? Okay, awesome.
With all my blunders, they can tell it's not edited. But no, we will be live, and we're super excited. So if we are going live, that means you can tune in, and you can type out some questions on Facebook, and we'll have someone monitoring it, and we'll be able
Kelly,
to
probably,
answer.
right?
Yes, most likely Kelly, who is fabulous. She's always here helping us do this. So she will be telling us our questions, the questions that you answer, and we can answer them on the spot even.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about what Maundy, Thursday means, why we call it Good Friday, since it seems to be like such a bad day where evil triumphed, and even why do we do an Easter sunrise service? Why do we get up at dark 30 to celebrate Easter?
Why do you get up at dark 30?
Well, that is true.
I'm still in bed.
Well, thank you all for joining us. Jill, thanks again.
Yes, I'm really excited to do this. Thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next Thursday live.
God bless.